Hey, Zack here from Frontenac Outfitters Canoe and Kayak Center. Today, gonna try and give you a little bit of advice if you're shopping for your first dry suit or maybe looking to upgrade. Try and answer some frequently asked questions about what to look for when you're purchasing a dry suit. If you've looked at dry suits, and I feel most paddlers have, there's usually that shock value of like, wow, that costs more than my kayak, or that cost half of my kayak, or whatever the case may be. There's certainly a very big barrier on that cost. And for some people, it's hard to justify. But if you look at, the value of how many more days it can add to your paddling season, whether it be all year long, depending where you live, if your lakes don't completely freeze over, or if it adds, a month at the beginning and a month at the end, and also just the inherent safety factor that a dry suit provides. I think there is some real value there. A lot of these suits, they'll last 5 to 10 years easily with little maintenance, and even longer if you have a stringent maintenance plan. You can get a long lifespan out of these, which really brings that purchase price over time down to a very reasonable level. Certain places will rent dry suits. It's fairly uncommon, probably more and more coastal regions, you'll be able to find them. That may be advantageous to some, not to others. Likely cost is still gonna be fairly high for a daily rental, but if you only need it for the one day, so be it. Maybe you're going on a coastal trip and an outfitter will rent you one for a week. Have at it if that's the only time you're ever going to require one. I feel like there is value in owning your own, just in the sense if you're going to be paddling early season or late season, that extra protection is really valuable. Buying used suits, there's a great way to save some money. There's obviously risk, buyer beware. I'm sure you've heard that before. What are the risks of buying a used suit? Well, it could be that it's, worn its life cycle out. It's not super dry anymore. It may need the gaskets replaced. It could have a faulty zipper. You're likely not gonna be able to really test it out unless you're maybe buying it from a friend or something. So there's a good chance to save some money. There's also a good chance that you may get ripped off. So purchase a used suit at your own risk. A lot of them could be revived or repaired and you'd still save a ton of money, but hey, is what it is. Personally, I would prefer to buy a new one unless I knew who the owner was and how the gear had been treated. So obviously sizing a dry suit, really important. We're all very different and this is a one-piece suit, so it's not like I'm putting on a large shirt and medium pants, which I don't do, by the way. It's more of a large and a large. Someone like myself, I'm lucky because I can fit into a large suit and it fits me fairly well. Now, if I took my torso and added 4 inches, I'd probably have a hard time finding a standard size suit. So there are manufacturers, Kokatat being one, that will make a custom tailored suit. These days, with the pandemic and supply chains being the way they are, lead times are pretty crazy, but we're hoping that'll improve over the course of the next year or so. Men's and women's suits do exist. This is a thing, and the biggest difference is obviously going to be in the cut, in the sizing, in how they do that. Women's suits tend to be a little bit smaller, and again, I'm sorry ladies, but they're not always thinking about maybe the average women. They might be thinking more of an athletic woman, but the same goes with the guys. Us guys, if we've got a bit of a beer belly, the suit is generally tailored for more of an athletic fit, so certainly something to keep in mind when trying out suits. There are a lot of ladies out there that will get into a men's suit because it just fits better. One of the big key differences, though, between the two suits is the location of a relief zipper. What's a relief zipper? Well, when you gotta go to the bathroom, they call it a relief zipper, so you can get some relief without having to undo the whole suit, take it off, and do your business. Not all suits are gonna come with a relief zipper. That's a cost that's added to the suit, which brings the overall value and the expense of the suit up. But a good way to save some money is to not have a relief zipper. Most manufacturers these days are including one, regardless whether you want one or not. Difference between a men's and a women's. Men's is at the front, women's will usually have maybe some type of trap door at the back or some type of access so that they can do the business they like to do. Other considerations, and I think this is maybe one of the most important, is the material that the suit is made out of. So these days we have Gore-Tex and we have not Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex is the king and it continues to be the king. It may be replaced one day, I don't know. As of right now though, Gore-Tex still reigns as the most breathable and the most waterproof and the most durable. The Gore-Tex Pro that we find in dry suits from Kokatat, NRS, is a heavy-duty Gore-Tex material that's highly breathable but highly waterproof as well. So it's going to keep you the most comfortable on the water, but you do pay a premium for that product. Other materials, you know, I don't know what we call them. It's essentially maybe a 2 or 3 layer breathable nylon type fabric that is supposed to work like Gore-Tex. Oftentimes what we find though, it doesn't stand the test of time the way Gore-Tex does. It requires more maintenance. Generally, the seams aren't quite as well built, and the fabric overall tends to wet out faster and let moisture or water into the suit. Not in the sense that it's going to be leaking inside like crazy, but you're more prone to being in a damp suit as opposed to a dry suit after, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons down the road. Other things to consider are the gaskets. If you've never worn a dry suit, they are not comfortable. I hate to say it, but I mean, I think it's just the reality. You do get used to it, but the first time you put one on, the wrist gaskets are going to be really tight. The neck gasket, which everyone notices, really tight. They will stretch a little bit. They can be trimmed, and these are things that we can go over on how to do this if you are purchasing one. I think what's important to consider though is in the neck gasket is they're super tight. There are comfort style ones available, and this is going to be more called a semi-dry suit because the neck gasket is going to be made out of like a neoprene material, so it's going to be much softer on the neck, but it's also not going to keep you as dry in the event if you capsize, water will likely get in there. Now, it's probably going to keep you 95% dry in the event of a capsize because once your PFD brings you up to the surface, no more water is likely going to leak in unless you're in really rough conditions. If you're paddling in really rough conditions, white water, you know, ocean swell, rough days on the lake, you should probably be in a latex style neck gasket. If you have a latex allergy, well, there are suits available that don't have latex. Again, they're just going to use that neoprene. So not technically a dry suit, but it's going to keep you mostly dry and mostly safe. Can you swim in these things? You can. I mean, it's like jumping in the lake with, you know, your rain gear on. It's not super easy, but it's absolutely doable. What you should be doing is before you go set out on your paddle is burping the suit by either, you know, pulling that gasket and scrunching down into a ball and trying to release a good portion of that air. Or some people, they'll kind of just, you know, walk into the lake or jump into the lake, pull that gasket, let the air out, and you're good to go. I don't personally like to get all the air out of the suit because it kind of creates like almost a vacuum and it really squishes everything down. So I generally just crunch up into a ball, get most of it out. If I hop in my kayak and I notice I feel a bit like the Michelin Man, I just open that gasket and let a bit more air out. I think lastly, the point to touch on would be the style of suit that you're after. We talked about gaskets and what type of style, and then I mean that'll I think kind of set what you're looking for. But there's a lot of features on a lot of dry suits that are designed with certain applications in mind. So, do you want a hood? Do you need extra pockets? So you want to look at something more of a touring suit. If you're paddling a lot of whitewater, the rear entry ones tend to be really popular because you don't have the zipper kind of in the front, so you have a better range of motion. So there's a few things to consider. Most are going to come with like a fabric booty these days, so you know you're going to want to invest in if you don't already have a decent pair of paddling shoes or boots. What are you going to use on your hands? Gloves, pogies, nothing, because they're not going to come, you're not going to have a dry suit that has integrated gloves with it. So these are things to consider as well. We're happy to answer any questions you have about choosing the right dry suit, whether it's the size or style for what you need it for. As always, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. FrontenacOutfitters.com. Thanks a lot for watching.